This week's episode of Magic Rays of Light is dedicated to the memory of Gaudi Award-winning actress Verónica Echegui, star of Love You to Death and a number of other Spanish-language films and series, who passed away this week at the age of 42. Hello and welcome to episode 182 of Magic Rays of Light, podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. I'm your host, Devin Dundee. I'm joined by my co-host, Sigmund Judge. Sigmund, we thought this would be the week, and it was the week. Apple sent out invitations to its September event. Of course, we basically set our calendars by this event every year, but now we know the details. It's going to be September 9th at 10 a.m., and it's called Awe-dropping. So, are you ready?
I'm ready to have my awe dropped, for sure. I mean, every time September rolls around, we get excited. This is a year that I think we're getting even more excited. We've been waiting all year for a new Apple TV. Now, we don't know for certain that an Apple TV is going to be announced at this event. It may come in October. It may come via a press release, which would be disappointing, because I think Apple TV does deserve some stage time. But here's an interesting fact. September 9th was also the date 10 years ago when Apple TV HD and tvOS was given its big reveal on stage from Eddie Q. And it really started off this fascination with Apple TV for me. So I'm really hoping that we're going to get a seminal moment at some point. Maybe not necessarily September. There definitely aren't any hints to a forthcoming Apple TV in the invite because, of course, the priority in September is always iPhone. But also, maybe this year, Apple Watch as well. Looking at the invite, what is it that you're reading in the tea leaves, Devon?
I try to keep it pretty simple. To me, the most interesting thing about this invitation is the colors, the blue and orange, because those are the rumored colors for the Pro iPhone this year. And so I wonder if that's like a very subtle hint about colorways. You know me, I'm obsessed with the colors of Apple's products, and every year when they change, I do like a little mental model breakdown, try to remember. So I'm very interested to see if the blue and orange pan out. That's my theory that I'm going with. What about you?
Maybe it's something to do with some kind of health monitoring with the new Apple Watch. If you think about the 10th anniversary Apple Watch was nice, but it wasn't revolutionary really in any big way. And so I'm excited to see what the Apple Watch team are up to this year. But otherwise, I really don't know. I have theories, but I'll keep those for next week and our predictions, keeping them close to my chest.
Yes. Always playing the game, Sigmund. I always look forward to our prediction segment every year. We'll be sharing those next week and getting ready for the event. It's an exciting time, and I can't wait to break that down with you here in just a couple of weeks. But as far as this week on the show, we're going to break down the technical details of the F1 home release. We're going to share details of an Apple TV Plus price hike and what that could be indicating. But we're going to start with the return of Apple original sci-fi series, Invasion.
The ultimate apex aliens have finally emerged, rapidly spreading their deadly tendrils across our planet. But what will it take for all of our heroes to work together and use all of their experience and expertise to finally infiltrate the alien mothership and hopefully save our species?
It's clear now the aliens were not retreating to die. They were regrouping to attack.
I think somewhere deep down we all knew it wasn't over.
Something is coming. Something none of us can hide from.
Invasion Season 3 comes to us from Simon Kinberg and David Will. Now, I've got to be open and frank off the bat when it comes to Invasion. For whatever reason, each season had a moment or two that pulled me out. But each season has had that kind of rejuvenating feeling early on for me personally. And this season does the same right off the bat. Incredible big production, and the opening moments of this season look promising to say the least, but the screeners we had access to were mixed in 2-channel audio, so I quickly bailed, ready for the full experience, which debuted last Friday on Apple TV+. Before we dive into your thoughts, though, where do we pick up this season?
It's an interesting place where we pick up because there's a 2-year time jump between seasons 2 and 3, which when we talked about the trailer, I shared that I felt like there was a lot happening between the 2 seasons. I said I felt like I'd missed like a whole season of the show, but that explains it. And it's really interesting, the decision that they've made here, because of course season 2 ended with Travante and Casper getting up into the alien mothership and going together to take on the aliens. And so my assumption was that the season was going to be about their journey and what happened there. And maybe it is in some way, but at least initially we're skipping all of that. We're going 2 years into the future, where the world is now celebrating the 2-year anniversary of M-Day, which is actually the day Travante and Casper brought down the alien mothership, seemingly defeating the aliens for good and giving their lives in the process. So whatever that battle was, we don't know. We just know that the end result is that the ship did come down, and for the past 2 years, the alien invasion has stopped. The aliens are all retreating back to the fallen mothership, and there's been no aggression or battle for the past 2 years, which of course makes the world leaders just assume, okay, well, we must have won, right? That's what they assumed at the end of season 1, and they assumed the same at the beginning of season 3. But just when the world thinks the threat is gone, one of the alien portals reopens, and Travante comes through very much alive, but with no memory of what happened on the ship. All he has is a strong feeling that the aliens are returning. So that's the setup for season 3. And I think it's a really intriguing premise here, because now we've got this 2-year time gap that I assume we're going to have to fill in a little bit so we understand what actually happened. Of course, the question I had with the trailer for season 3 was, where is Casper? That's another open question, but really, really interesting premise here, and the decision they made to, I assume what they're doing is trying to set up the final battle by just skipping ahead and getting to the apex predators coming, or their impending arrival anyway. But I have to say, the season started off, the opening scene, in such a different way than what we've come to expect from Invasion. And I found it really enjoyable. Like, it feels a little bad to say this, Sigmund, but I was laughing during the opening scene of the first episode, because it's just a classic way of introducing a monster kind of motif, right? You start with this random family on a regular night. You don't know these people. The stakes are pretty low, but you get the feeling something bad is going to happen to them. And then, of course, you just watch it play out. It's probably not supposed to be funny, but I got to admit, Sigmund, I did laugh a little bit when the guy goes in the backyard looking for his dog. I'm like, yeah, that guy's not coming back. So anyway, it kind of gave me like vibes of, again, it felt classic. Movies I watched as a child where, again, they're just setting up that threat in a way that I think is really approachable, and I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of like B-movie vibe to it, mixed in with a little bit of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It didn't feel like something that came out a few years ago. There's definitely a distinct change in choice, I think, stylistically, at least for that intro.
Yeah.
I also wonder whether or not the aliens retreated, or if they were just quietly learning, ready to come back. Do you think that big gap and the way in which this third season's being set out is being designed to be far more approachable? Because I'd imagine, you know, if you didn't start from the beginning, you want some kind of in to get into Invasion. Maybe join the series for its high points.
Yeah, that's another kind of classic aspect of this show, I think, because you really could jump in at any season and catch up pretty quickly about what's going on, even without the recaps, which of course we don't have the benefit of with the screeners, right? There's plenty of context within the series itself to let you know what's going on and who's important. So yeah, I think that is a pretty intentional decision, and maybe that's why there's this time gap for season 3. It's restarting the story from a place that people can jump in, which reminds me of classic days of like broadcast TV where you just flip the channel and find what's on and jump in wherever it's at. I actually did that with The Walking Dead several years ago, jumped in the middle, and for the most part you can catch up on that kind of series. And I do feel like this is one of those as well where, of course, you get the benefits if you've watched it long term of understanding more context, but the series is structured in a way that you can jump in at any point. And I think that kind of just speaks to its overall approach to its genre and its structure. It's just a very down-to-earth sci-fi story, and I think that's part of what makes it so popular and why people enjoy it so much. And it's a little tongue-in-cheek, but it does take place on a world that's very much like our own, with characters we can easily relate to, and a plot that really does seem plausible. Like, if you start with our world today and have this alien invasion, the timeline of invasion seems like it very well could be the way that things go. And so it's a world that's so similar to ours, just like with like one little tweak that changed the course of history, but it feels like something that people can relate to. The plot's also really easy to follow. It's laid out in a very straightforward way. Major revelations are spelled out clearly, and again, there's constant opportunities to catch back up and pick up on that context if you need to, while of course it is also dropping hints for people who want to put the pieces together for themselves. So I've never been watching Invasion and thought, what just happened? It seems like it's just very easy to follow in that way while also being satisfying. I think it also speaks to some universal fears, not only about an alien invasion, which is kind of lower on my list of fears, but also about really world-disrupting events, which these days could be things like AI or international tensions coming to a head. You know, there's these moments in history that do change the course of history, and in this show, it's an alien invasion, but I think it speaks to the moment and things that we think about and worry about and ways that the world is changing. And it's a little bit cathartic in that way. It's one of those shows that anyone can jump into and they can watch together as a family. I think it's got a really broad appeal in that way, and I think that seems to be really working for it, and they're continuing that with season 3.
It's interesting you say that, because it makes me wonder whether or not this show's ever going to look at an alien invasion from the perspective of tensions that currently exist, and whether or not everyone would be able to unite against a bigger threat. I have my doubts. That said, do you think fans of the first 2 seasons are going to be pleased by the way season 3 starts out? I mean, beyond the poor dog and its owner and monsters, I think there's a lot more action. There's a lot more character, adventure. The first season was very slow and brooding, and there were a couple of highlights that I could pick out quite easily from that first season, and the rest of it just kind of dissipated really from my memory. Season 2, even better, because we have a bit of a focus on one of the younger characters who's becoming more prominent, and we rejoin this season, and of course Billy Bartlett's character is older because Billy Bartlett's older as well.
Well, I think you're hitting at something there with the pacing. I feel like now that we're 2 seasons in, we're starting the 3rd season, there's a lot less table setting that needs to be done, and we can just kind of get straight to the action. Because I agree with you, season 1 very much establishing the characters. Season 2 was starting to bring some of the strands together, but here in season 3, I think we're really hitting the ground running. And so it's very much what we've come to love from Invasion, but like you said, with more action and less of that table setting, because we all know the premise now, right? The aliens have attacked. Here are your main characters. Let's figure out how we're all going to work this out. And so I like that aspect of it. I like the extra action. I think people are going to like that mystery element of what happened with Travante up there and trying to fill in those gaps as we go. So yeah, I think it does a good job of moving the story forward with that time jump, but it's still very much just focused on this overarching story of the alien invasion and the human response to it, now with these characters that are very well established so we can hit the ground running. So if you enjoy the first couple seasons of Invasion, I think this is just more of that, maybe cranked up a little bit higher with the intensity, and I think people are going to be very pleased.
Apologies, it's Billy Barrett, not Bartlett. Speaking of the characters, the description for this season hints that we'll see the main cast spending more time together this season, whereas before, it was very much split, and they're going to unite this time to face the alien threat as a single team. Does that have you excited, and does it make sense, and what else are you looking forward to this season, do you think?
Yeah, I think it does make a lot of sense. I think we started to see a little bit of it in season 2 where the storylines were starting to overlap, especially in terms of the portals and getting people up to the mothership. But I think it makes sense now that here we are, round 3 of the invasion, right? We thought we won the first 2. Now it seems like it's happening again. So I think the world is more organized and prepared to bring together the best resources. And we're already starting to see those pairings come together. And I think as the season continues, they're going to coalesce, and all the people that we've seen from across the world are going to be working together on this threat, which has me very excited. Because, the show started with this really broad global approach to the story with characters from all around the world. We were in Europe, we were in the United States, we were in the Middle East, and it feels like now the story is drawing them all to one place. We've got this World Council that's sort of organizing everything, and I think that's going to be the focal point. So now that we're invested in these characters and the true final showdown is coming, I think it makes sense to bring them together. I think it's going to lead to some interesting dynamics of people who we've spent time with but haven't spent time with each other, and some people who are used to working on their own and know their role in fighting the alien invasion but don't necessarily understand the full puzzle. And so seeing them come together and bring their different talents, I think that's going to be really interesting. I still want to know more about the humans who have strange connections with the alien hive mind. We spent a lot of time with Casper and his drawings over the past couple of seasons, but we know that there's a bunch of other kids and adults who have connections with the aliens, and what exactly that looks like and why that's happening, I think is going to be interesting. I feel like we're probably going to be exploring that more through Mitsuki's experience this season, though, of course, I wouldn't count Billy Barrett out. I hope to see more of him, but I feel like they're shifting that perspective more to her and her connection and using that as the inlet, whereas the past couple of seasons it was more Casper. But I just want to know, is there something about these people that makes them more connected to the aliens, or is this a part of the attack, or is this a vulnerability? I just really want to know more about that. So I think that'll be interesting to see play out. Hopefully they'll explain that. And then also the question of just what the aliens have in store for their potentially final attack. Of course, we know from the description, it seems like they're bringing the very best of the best, which you would have thought they would have brought for Wave 1 or Wave 2. But anyway, it seems like we're setting up for the final battle. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet. And of course, the question of how humanity can move forward after these repeated victories. And of course, I'm rooting for the humans for round 3. Hopefully they're able to overcome. But it's going to be interesting to see what that dynamic looks like. And again, with the world governments now coalescing around this council, there's also the opportunity for corruption and cover-up, which I think they're setting up a little bit too with Eric Lang's character, Jack Hollander, who's the head of intelligence, but very much in denial about any sort of impending threat. So I think there's a lot of interesting things here. Questions about how this showdown's going to go down, and how can you ever be sure, now that the world is opened up to these threats beyond, our atmosphere, how do you ever really have security and peace again? I think that's going to be an interesting question. So lots of things going into the 3rd season, and I'm really, really excited for it.
I have a theory, Devon. Maybe this isn't the first time that they invaded Earth and people just weren't aware. And maybe the people that have connections with the aliens are aliens, but they're so well integrated and don't have a memory of being an alien. I don't know. It's a theory. I often wonder if aliens live amongst us even now, due to some choices that are made by certain individuals. But anyway, the 3rd season premiere of Invasion is now streaming on Apple TV Plus, with new episodes available every Friday. We'd love to hear your thoughts throughout this season of Invasion. Yeah, look forward to recapping at the end. But last week also saw a surprise release. I mean, not a surprise for anyone that listened to this podcast, because we preempted any announcement that F1 the movie was coming to video on demand or premium video on demand, costing $24.99 and now available for everyone across the Apple TV app for purchase ahead of, I'd imagine, like an October, November Apple TV Plus release. Did you purchase F1 or are you F1'd out at the moment? Do you have a little bit of F1 fatigue?
I would say I have F1 fatigue, Sigmund. I'm just, I'm a streamer. You know me. It's my heart. So I pay for the streaming services. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, I'm going to wait to rewatch it when it gets on Apple TV Plus, which I hope won't be too long. But for all the collectors out there, you know, I know that this is an important time period. It's also important for the film to make some extra money after its incredible box office performance. And this is another layer. Yeah, we're kind of in the in-between state between theaters and streaming. And we've got this home release, which I know we were both anticipating in terms of just understanding the technical details of it and what the experience is going to be like in terms of what they're offering and if Apple was going to do anything special for any particular platform. I know I don't even have to ask you. I'm sure you pre-ordered it if that was even available. And certainly have it now in your ever-growing Apple TV film collection, Sigmund. I'm assuming you've had a chance to watch it at home. Tell us a little about what that experience is like and what's being offered here.
Absolutely. So, yeah, it was something that I knew as soon as it came out I needed to have in my collection. As we've come to find out in recent weeks, you know, Apple original films are now slowly becoming more accessible for people that want to add these licenses to their purchase libraries in the TV app and other video stores. The one thing that I'll lead with in terms of this being a special release is that this is the first Apple original film to be available for purchase that actually comes with a slew of extras. They include inside the F1 the movie table read, the anatomy of a crash, getting up to speed, APXGP innovations, making it to Silverstone, Lewis Hamilton as a producer, APXGP sets and locations, APXGP and F1, how it was filmed, and a special look at the sound of speed. Short extras, I think totaling in just over 3/4 of an hour altogether, but great insights there and nice and easy just to, you know, have all in one place. So that's nice. Of course, as soon as F1 came out, because it was late, the first place that I experienced F1 the movie, the home release, was on Apple Vision Pro. The main reason for that is because, of course, we were expectant of some kind of special experience. I know, you know, we're still waiting on a special immersive environment based on Silverstone. That would have been nice. But the one thing that was lacking from this experience off the bat was the lack of IMAX scenes. And we were, of course, hoping that this might be the first working example of the new dynamic masking for films with multiple aspect ratios being introduced in visionOS 26. So, you know, we have to be a little bit patient because we are still literally weeks away from a public release of visionOS 26. But, you know, the IMAX scenes, they benefit from big screens, and whilst also impressive on a 130-inch screen in a home theatre, nothing quite compares to the virtual 100-foot screen on Apple Vision Pro or the 85-foot by 65-foot screen at London's BFI IMAX, where I was able to see the film twice. That's where IMAX really excels. Instead, unfortunately, the home presentation, or at least the early version of it, is presented in a fixed 239 by 1 aspect ratio, which is passable, but I'm a baby, Devon. And, you know, I want it all, and I want it all now. So I was surprised that the expanded scenes weren't included, but IMAX on digital is always very hit and miss. So it wasn't a given. It was definitely something that was always in question, But seeing Warner Brothers were the distributors and what they did for Sinners earlier this year by including the IMAX expanded scenes within the digital version, I was surprised that they weren't included here. We'll get into the importance of IMAX and what our thoughts are in a moment, but just some technical details on this film that we haven't really covered before. F1 was shot in 4K, 6K and 8.6K with a 4K DI, which is a digital intermediate finish. The decision to shoot in IMAX was not an afterthought and was a core element of the film's visual design language. So this wasn't framed specifically for 239:1, but if you have a look at the background footage, you'll see that, of course, they have, framed for all of the formats to make sure that it's going to fit in all of these different presentations, because like yourself, you didn't get to see it in IMAX, but it was perfectly enjoyable in the theatre that you saw it in theatrically. Sinners got a surprising enhanced version for digital, whilst Oppenheimer stuck to a fixed aspect ratio, keeping the enhanced version exclusive to disc. So maybe that is the route that we're going down, although Oppenheimer was brought out by Universal and Warner Brothers will have a different way of going about it. And I'm sure Apple are in the mix there as well, trying to decide what is the best format for their platforms as well. I guess my question here is, given that Apple TV shows and films have been trending the direction of 2:1 and 2:2, leaving the smallest of pillar boxes, whilst Marvel films are constantly ratio switching, as you'll probably have experienced, Devon, but that's being used more as a storytelling device as opposed to, I don't know, some enhanced theatrical experience at home. How important are the missing expanded IMAX ratio scenes to you? And are we generally fans of aspect ratio switching at home? Keep in mind, you're watching most of your films and TV on a TV, and I imagine some on Apple Vision Pro, being the Apple Vision Pro guy.
I mean, personally, I'm one of those people who I want the best, most cinematic experience I can get, and especially on the Apple Vision Pro, but even on my TV, I do think those IMAX ratio scenes being included would be an excellent addition. Does it necessarily diminish my experience that they're not there? I mean, most people aren't going to be thinking about it. Most people are just going to watch whatever format is available, and for those who aren't particularly attuned to this, they might not even know that it was shot for IMAX. So I don't think it necessarily diminishes the home experience that it's not there. But for those of us who are really diehard film fans and care about not only the final product, but also the way it's made and the technical aspects of it, I do think there's a little bit something missing there that it's not included. I also feel like, as you mentioned, we live in a world where differing aspect ratios, even within the same film or TV show, are just a part of the creative process now. And it's not like the days when you'd go to the store and buy a DVD and you had the option of wide or full. Do you remember those days? And sometimes they'd even put it on the same disc and you'd have to choose at the menu which version you wanted. And I guess people were not fans of the pillar boxing, especially when TVs went widescreen or as different formats were changing. But I feel like these days with just, every streamer has its own approach. Different creators have different ways of doing it. And like you said, it's even done for the purpose of different impacts during certain films. So I feel like we've moved past where that's really an issue. And so I feel like, personally, I would prefer the original aspect ratio, the IMAX be available. Or I feel like that would be less controversial of a decision now than it would have been maybe 10 or 15 years ago, that people are just used to it. And I think other people might appreciate the scope of it and the scale. And at the same time, also for the people who took the time to frame those things and put in the investment to film it in IMAX, I feel like having it be able to be enjoyed in that format at home as well. I mean, this film's going to live on much longer on Apple TV Plus and in the store than it does in theaters, and I feel like more people eventually will have seen it at home than in theaters, so they're going to be seeing that version rather than the way that it maybe was more intended to be seen. And so, yeah, I hope at some point and in some way that version becomes available, because I do think people would enjoy it, and I don't think it would be nearly as distracting as it might have been in a different era. I'm assuming that, based on our conversation, you were hoping for the same thing and still hoping to see those IMAX scenes at home as well, especially on your gigantic screen, right?
That's the thing, right? Talking a little bit about home theatre, and I understand this is going to be very niche, because I understand my privilege in having a home theatre, but during the planning phase of my home theatre, I had to decide whether or not I was going to go with a scope screen, because we talk a lot about television and I watch a lot of television. It made the most sense to not go scope so that I could also get the expanded, enhanced IMAX scenes playing nicely as well. I'm a big fan of the expanded scenes for IMAX, to the point where I had to get a physical copy of Oppenheimer, have that ripped so that I could experience those scenes because they weren't available in the digital home release. I will say, from a watchable experience online, the video quality, exceptional. Some nice specular highlights, especially during some of the explosive scenes, and that's as much as I'll say about that if you haven't seen it yet. And you've got very much an otherwise muted palette, right? Because this is going for the realism. It's not a necessarily glossy film, but it's a very detailed film. And that detail is really, really important. In terms of audio, though, this is where I think things are a little bit more interesting than video. And you know what they say, audio is half the picture. And when it comes to F1, the movie, I think it's more than half the picture, actually. Now, for Vision Pro, I love the spatial mix. I think it performs well overall for personal devices. So I watch it on Vision Pro. If you were to watch with AirPods on your iPad, please don't do it on your iPhone. That's sacrilege. iPad, I'll let you get away with. But yeah, if you're going to watch with personal headphones, I think the mix is perfectly acceptable. Lots of detail. But each blockbuster film has its playback guidelines for exhibitors. And the guideline for F1 the movie, which we'll all have experienced if we've gone to see it. I saw people walk out of certain screenings and say, it's really loud. You know, can you bring it down a little bit? Well, no, the guidance was to play this film really loud and really aggressive to get fully immersed in everything. And the sound design is so pivotal to this film. That said, every studio also delivers vastly different mixes for home releases than they do for theatrical exhibitors. That's mainly due to mixing down to compressed audio formats for digital streaming distribution. But even, you know, you're having to compress these formats even down for the lossless formats that are distributed on both disc and Kaleidoscope. They're all going to be mixed differently because they're all expecting different setups, right? From a sound bar to a 5.1 surround to, I don't know, a Dolby Atmos theater with two surround like right and left channels, to other home theaters that have four of them, just like your commercial theater, maybe even better. That's not what is being mixed for the home market. I'd say, you know, from my experience, the surround effects are limited to, again, the surround left and right. If you have multiple left and right channels, you're literally only getting sound from one of those channels on each side. There's also a pretty active Dolby Atmos mix, but it's limited mainly to the announcers and to the music score. Car noises and dialogue very much limited to your bed layer channels, which would be your surround rears, and your front three. And there is what I would say is a weird imbalance between the dialogue volume and the rest of the soundtrack, to a point that I had to question if I'd been watching with enhanced dialogue on, and I hadn't been. So These aren't things that we normally talk about from a technical level, but it's so soon after we've experienced it in the theatres that I wanted to talk about it in that sense. Now, the bonus of a film being distributed digitally is that things can change, right? We can see these IMAX enhanced scenes maybe come at a later date. Maybe they're exclusive to Apple TV Plus. Maybe they're exclusive to the physical copy. And that might just be a request from Joseph Kosinski, just like it was a request from Christopher Nolan with Oppenheimer, to basically bring in more revenue for the film, for fans to really be drawn to the physical copy. We'll have to wait and see on that. From a low frequency energy point of view, again, the bass, very muted, not as aggressive as I was expecting. And I've got 2 subwoofers and I've got the actuators in my chairs as well. Not quite 4D because that's a medical risk to me, but that was a lot of fun at home. I'm interested to see how this experience compares to, again, the planned physical release and the Kaleidoscape digital release, which I did actually get to experience, but very, very briefly, and too brief to really make a valid summation on. But that's what we have for now. Yeah, I mean, F1 the movie, it's been a success. I'm hoping it's going to be a success and a further success when visionOS 26 comes out, and hopefully we do see those IMAX enhanced scenes and we get our first look at that dynamic masking, which I think is going to be absolutely fantastic. I can't afford a masking system for my home theatre. They just cost too much. So to even bring that feature digitally and for it to even be thought of on Apple Vision Pro is something I'm very, very much looking forward to. It's probably going to be a little while before I watch F1 the movie again. This purchase was mainly for access to the extras and to give it a technical review of sorts.
Yeah, so this is like step 2 of the release, but there's still steps 3 and 4 with the streaming and the physical. I mean, that's the world we live in, and it's vast and complex, and I don't envy any of the people who are making the decisions of what goes where and trying to make a product that works in so many different environments. But I do feel like we're still in the middle. I think it's great to see it on PVOD, and even with some of the compromises that you mentioned, I think it's still a great film to watch at home. But I think the real home transition for the film is going to be when it hits Apple TV Plus. We see what Apple does there, and what bonuses and what extra features are going to be there. And then for the die-hard collectors who want lossless, who want the full res and the most they can get, it's good to know it's coming to physical. And I mean, this film, it's just getting the full-on treatment, right? And that's what we want to see. We're happy to see it, and we wanted to update everyone on where we're at in the standing with the film. We'll be keeping an eye out on what those releases look like as they come to streaming and physical as well.
Free steelbooks as well, so free steelbooks to collect.
An expensive Christmas for Sigmund.
Yeah, very much so. Something that was inexpensive this week that I purchased was a new app for Apple TV and tvOS. And this might sound gimmicky at first, but let's introduce it fairly. Ask AI, Chat to AI, now available on Apple TV thanks to prolific tvOS developer Phil Trevor. This is a newly launched app that simply brings ChatGPT to Apple TV and is based off of ChatGPT 5, the newly released model. Now, a couple of things why I think this is actually really helpful on Apple TV and how I've been using it over the last 24 hours or so. Firstly, perfect for groups who want to ask questions together and not have that isolating experience where one person is inputting into the screen and then you've got to trust what they're saying ChatGPT has told you is the truth, is what ChatGPT actually said. Then, You've also got, I think, a pretty good use case for TV and film related questions, including recommendations from directors' filmographies for first time watchers. Maybe great for those that want to explore, the work of Akira Kurosawa, for example, and ask what the films I should start with and what are they in rank order from a Metacritic point of view. ChatGPT can also fill in the void on technical elements for movies and TV shows that are missing from the TV app. Like, for example, who's the director of photography for this specific episode of this specific show. Also, really handy for getting tips about giving guidance on themes and narrative content on a show or a film before you start it, especially if someone that you're watching with is vulnerable in any way to specific themes. And I think from an accessibility point of view, ChatGPT can also give guidance and advice regarding setup for watching TV and movies with those susceptible to epilepsy and things like that. So this, I think, is really, really handy and is a great tool to have. It's quite limited, right? There's unfortunately no way to link your personal account, and it's not on device. It also doesn't feature audible feedback just yet, which is a touch that I really enjoy in my day-to-day interactions with ChatGPT. But it does feature a simple layout. It's a really cool tool that I've added to my apps on Apple TV, and it's available now for just $2. And I just think well worth it, in my opinion, even given its limited capabilities.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about Apple Intelligence coming to tvOS eventually and what that could look like and what the benefits could be. And I think this is a cool little hint at the way that these tools can be useful on the Apple TV. I think this is a great use case and a good addition. I know I personally use the ChatGPT integration on my phone all the time, even in the car when I have a question I want to ask and I want a more in-depth answer, I'll use that. But when I'm at home and I have that kind of question, I'm tempted to ask my Apple TV or HomePods, and of course they're not going to help me with that kind of thing. And so I have to remember which devices can do what. So having this capability on the Apple TV could also help reduce some of that friction and mental overhead. So I think there's definitely some good use cases here. And again, I think this is just another sign that there is room on the platform for these kinds of tools. And when they're done well, I think they can be successful and useful to people. And I like what you said about the group aspect of it, because I've definitely had those conversations where I'm talking with a friend and one of us is on ChatGPT, or maybe we're both on ChatGPT having separate conversations but trying to get at the same thing. And it's like, if we could streamline this and collaborate on it, that would be much better. So yeah, I think there's a lot of use cases here. This is a cool app, and of course we'll link to it in the show notes, and we hope people will check it out. Now, for Vision Pro users, you have access to a new immersive environment via the HBO Max app, which has added the Hogwarts Town Hall as an environment within the app, in addition to the throne room from Game of Thrones that came way back when HBO Max came to Vision OS. Harry Potter fans can experience the massive hall with its expansive ceiling, long tables, and ambient sounds in both day and night modes. Of course, in night mode, it's got the candles floating up above you as well, which is very cool. So if you want to watch your HBO Max series and films while in the Great Hall from Harry Potter, you can now do so. And it's cool to see another immersive environment coming to a third-party app on Vision OS, as we still eagerly await the Jupiter environment in the Vision OS 26 beta.
Oh, you know what? I totally forgot about it. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things, almost everything that was announced at WWDC has been able to be tested in the beta, and that's one that hasn't yet. And it's got that timeline aspect to it as well. So if you can't tell, been thinking a lot about Vision OS and what's going on with it this year, and hopefully I'll get to test that out before the final release and of course, review season, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. I'm excited for your takes on this year's Vision OS release, because it is a pretty big one. And I guess in between, you'll be casting spells in the Harry Potter environment from the wonderful folks at Warner. However, What's cast a spell over me this week has been 2 Apple original trailers that we're about to discuss in our trailer talk. Starting with the morning show season 4, with the UBA-NBN merger complete, the newsroom must grapple with newfound responsibility, hidden motives, and the elusive nature of truth in a polarized America. In a world rife with deepfakes, conspiracy theories, and corporate cover-ups, who can you trust? And how can you know what's actually real?
I'm working on a story. UBA was involved in a cover-up. Work with me.
Sounds like the drama at the network is juicier than the drama on the network.
It's my time now. Is that some kind of a threat? To get what you want, you need to burn the house down.
Now, this stars and is executive produced by Reese Witherspoon and Jennifer Aniston, executive produced by new showrunner Charlotte Stout and director Mimi Leder, with an ensemble cast including 2-time Emmy Award-winning Billy Crudup, Mark Duplass, Nesta Carbonell, Karen Pittman, Greta Lee, Nicole Bahari, and Emmy Award winner John Hamm, alongside new cast of the season, including Aaron Pierre, William Jackson Harper, Boyd Holbrook, Jeremy Irons, and the brilliant Marianne Cotillard, who introduces new power dynamics to this season, as if there wasn't already enough jostling for position in the first few seasons. The show has really tackled so much over its run so far. From the Me Too movement to DEI, corruption in our media landscape amidst political tensions, and a global pandemic, who could forget? What did you think of this full trailer? Personally, it was enough to whet my appetite. No need for more ahead of the season's upcoming premiere next month.
You know, those of us who have seen the first 3 seasons of Morning Show, we pretty much know what to expect. It's going to be people yelling at each other about how to cover the news and letting their personal vendettas influence the on-screen performances and things like that. So I think we don't need much more than that. We get little hints about the plot here and there, but I don't want to be spoiled. I just want to go into it and experience what they have for us after all this time waiting for season 4. I think the plot element that intrigues me most about this trailer is Bradley investigating a cover-up by UBA in the past. We don't know exactly what that cover-up is or who it's affecting, but it is a little bit, I think, of a throwback to season 1 with everything with Mitch, Steve Carell's character, and the way that whole thing was handled. But this seems like it's going to be on a bigger scale. And, of course, it's going to create conflict between our 2 main characters, which every season they somehow end up on the opposite sides of some kind of conflict and then end up having to come back together. So we'll see how exactly that plays out, but that'll be interesting. And then I was really happy to see John Hamm's involvement again this season. We weren't sure exactly what that was going to look like. It seems like he's going to be a pretty significant presence this season based on how much we see him in the trailer, or maybe they just know that he draws an audience, and so they're really making him prominent. But either way, I'm excited that he's coming back. This looks like a great season of The Morning Show based on what we've seen in the trailer. And like you said, I don't think we need any more details. We just need to get ready for it and be prepared for when it comes out on Wednesday, September 17th on Apple TV+.
Also this week, we saw the debut trailer for the highly anticipated The Savant. By day, Jodie's your average suburban mum. By night, though, she's uncovering the darkest corners of the internet.
My job is to find members of hate groups.
The hunt has begun.
And stop them from doing really bad things.
That's why we call her the Savant.
I've been watching him for a year and a half. He's recruiting for something. He's on the verge of serious violence.
I don't think you should keep pushing this.
If you engage with terrible things, you're daring even worse things to happen.
This stars and executive produced by Jessica Chastain and comes to us from 5th season. Of course, the wonderful minds behind Apple originals like C and Severance. And this is based on the Cosmopolitan feature by Andrea Stanley, also starring Nnamdi Asomugha, Cole Damon, Jordana Spiro, Trinity Lee Shirley, Tristan Francois Baptiste, and guest star Pablo Schreiber. We'll have a link to the original Cosmopolitan article in the show notes, because I think it's a really, really interesting read, and it's not been paywalled, so, really, really interesting, really, really in-depth, and it acts as the basis for the show's inspiration. I'm very much into conspiracy and different groups and how they build, sometimes from a practical joke, and then they spiral into something far, far more sinister. I'm really hoping that this show's going to look at that as well, and it's not just going to be the goodies versus the baddies, and there's going to be some human aspect to this, and not just surface level stuff, which is not what I expect from the people that are behind this series. And so my fingers are well and truly crossed for this. But based on the debut trailer, what did you think?
Yeah, this is absolutely intriguing to me. Of course, I'm a sucker for based on true stories. That's what this is, but it's an aspect of the world that I'd never really considered before or knew existed, that there were people who were putting their lives on the line to infiltrate these groups and try to stop them. And the trailer starts with some statistics, which is an interesting way to start a trailer for a narrative series, but it talks about how many terrorist attacks take place, in the United States, but also that so many of them are actually stopped before they ever happen because of people like this. So it's such an interesting and dangerous job, and the fact that there are real people out there doing it right now, I think that just gives the story even more stakes, and it's a really, really interesting premise for a series, and makes total sense that this article would be transformed in this way. I think the other aspect of the trailer that I think feels maybe a little more formulaic, but I think does add an intriguing twist to it as well, is that classic pitfall of going in too deep and blurring the lines in order to accomplish a greater good. And, so we're going to get into that as well. It's interesting that Pablo Schreiber is listed as a guest star because of his presence in the trailer, and he feels like this really big, menacing character in the series, but we'll see how much he's actually involved. But I think we might get some of that perspective you're talking about from him. I think this is a really interesting role for him, and again, just hit that portrayal just in the trailer alone is taking up space in my mind, so I'm interested to see more of that. But yeah, this all looks so fascinating, and I can't wait to see it. Thankfully, we won't have to wait long, just a little under a month, because the Savant premieres Friday, September 26th on Apple TV+.
Just these two trailers alone, I think, is pretty reflective of what is already a stacked lineup going into the end of this year. And so it's probably with no surprise that we're going to talk about a little bit of news that Apple have announced a price increase for Apple TV Plus, with the monthly cost rising from $9.99 to $12.99. Now, I think it's important to mention that the annual pricing hasn't changed, and the pricing hasn't reflected any change for Apple One subscribers. Now, I understand not everyone is going to want everything that Apple offer, and Apple One isn't for everyone, but from the perspective of an annual, pay once for the year and forget about it until the following year, I think that's the way to go. That's the clever way if you want to save some money, because the price hasn't changed there. And it's a good way of locking people in. That said, this isn't an insubstantial amount in terms of the increase, but I think it's worth it now when you think about how much there is on offer and how much is coming. And I had this conversation when the announcement was made at the tail end of last week, where a lot of people were saying, yeah, but there just isn't a lot there, right? The mainstream audience are going to go, well, I'm not getting my value here. And I think it's a question of quantity versus quality. We've talked about Netflix in the past, and yes, there's some really good stuff on Netflix. It's really, really difficult to find it and sift through it. Even with the new redesign, I think it's made things worse, but that's another subject for another time. With Apple TV Plus, I feel like discoverability has got better in recent years. Whilst it's not 100% guarantee, I'd say the majority of what Apple put out is watchable, if not, potential favourite material and worth re-watching. So if someone hasn't jumped in or someone jumped out of an Apple TV Plus subscription for even just a few months, there's going to be more than a handful of shows that will gauge their interest.
Yeah, I think as someone who covers this stuff and tries to keep up with as much of it as I can, the output has just really hit a stride, and the hit rate with Apple TV Plus is just so high. The fact that just about everything in the library, and the library has gotten substantial at this point, where if you've not subscribed to Apple TV Plus before and you're diving in now, it can cover you for a really long time. And there's so many different genres and styles and audiences that they're reaching with their output here. Most anything you pick is not going to be a dud. There's not filler in the library like I think you can run into with other streamers. I feel like even the quantity argument has kind of faded away as Apple has built up this repertoire of series and this constant output. But also, I think as people realize that a lot of other streamers, some of the stuff they're bringing in, some of it's really good, some of it's like classics that sometimes you want to revisit, but a lot of it, you're just scrolling past anyway. You're paying for it, but you're not really getting the benefit from it. So I think Apple TV Plus has hit a really good spot, especially with the series, and the films are ramping up as well. They looked at what they have for the fall and thought this is the time to make this move, to try to make it move towards profitability, which of course a lot of the streamers are still working to do, and try to make it worthwhile in terms of continuing to invest. Like you said, also pushing people towards the bundle and the annual subscription, because that reduces churn, which of course gives them more reliable income while helping users save money. And I think this is just, we're continuing to see the streaming market mature, and it's not to a place of settledness yet in terms of pricing. So it's just a trend we're seeing. I know that it's annoying. Unfortunately, it's where we're at. And so I would agree with you, Sigmund, in recommending for people who are feeling that price increase, look at the other options, because they're great ways to save money as well and get other benefits if you want to do that.
I mean, I've dropped off of a lot of subscriptions this year. I've already kind of tried to refine what my monthly outgoings are when it comes to entertainment. I think the important thing is Apple TV Plus still the lowest on a annual or monthly basis, whichever you choose, but still consistently highest quality bitrate. It's ad-free. It's all original programming in 4K HDR, all with Dolby Atmos. There's no extra tiers. There's no ads. There's offline downloads. You don't need to pay more for that access. And there's family sharing. So you can share with up to 6 family members that are designated, right? And it's all in one price. You're not having to pay an extra $5 here, an extra $4 there. And I think that's one of the things that will be overlooked by those that haven't yet experienced the service. And, the details that I feel need to be praised. So, Apple TV Plus, a little bit more expensive, but the quality and the output gets better and better and better.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Another interesting note that kind of went along with this price increase is that Apple is offering a discount to users who consider canceling their subscription. Upon canceling, some users are presented with the option to continue subscribing at a price of $5.99 per month for 2 months before returning to the full rate. I believe this was a capability that Apple introduced last year for developers who want to try to entice people to keep with their subscriptions when they're canceling, give them an opportunity to continue at a discounted rate and try to win back that business. And if you've ever canceled like Amazon Prime or something like that, you've seen these offers to try to keep you in. And Apple's giving it a try now with Apple TV Plus. So if you're someone who is considering canceling, you might run into this, and it might give you an opportunity to stick around for a couple months and see what's coming, especially in September, as we talked about. A great lineup there. So yeah, interesting things happening with Apple TV Plus and pricing. We're in the services and subscription world now, Sigmund, and there's no going back. And we'll continue to keep an eye on what's happening there.
And, new students are starting at college and universities very soon. They should not forget that if they're Apple Music subscribers, they get free access to Apple TV Plus. So, there's a little bit of give back there as well that is not highly promoted. But of course, amongst all of the big hitters, there's still more release news coming in September. This isn't officially at the point of us recording being given a press release or anything from Apple, but it's in the TV app, and that is the return of The Reluctant Traveller with Eugene Levy, returning for its third season Friday, September 19th on Apple TV+. Over its 8 episodes, the season will follow Levy on a truly global adventure as he attempts to curate his own ultimate travel bucket list. I think everyone should have an ultimate travel bucket list. Is there anywhere on your list that either you're hoping to go personally or you hope Levy gets there before and can kind of give you a guide as to where and what not to do?
Oh, I would love to see so many places, Sigmund. If I had to pick one place, probably go to Scotland because that's family ancestry, and visit some castles there. I think that would be amazing. And probably bring my dad along for some golf as well. That'd be what I'd want to do. But yeah, if Mr. Levy has any advice on that, I wouldn't mind it. You said everyone should have their own travel bucket list. I think everyone should just have their own travel show. Well, where are you going on your travel show that you're putting together, Sigmund?
Somewhere warm and somewhere with a swimming pool. I'm very much in the Eugene Levy mold in that regard.
Love it. In more release news this week, animated fantasy adventure series The Sisters Grimm is coming to Apple TV Plus on Friday, October 3rd. Based on the book series by Michael Buckley, the 6-episode show follows 2 mystery-solving sisters descended from the Brothers Grimm who must navigate a town full of people torn straight from fantasy and fairy tales, confronting heroes and villains alike while investigating the mystery of their missing parents. The series is developed by Amy Higgins and Erica Rothschild. It stars Ariel Winter, Leah Newman, Lorraine Newman, Abu Bakar Salim, Ted Lasso's Billy Harris, and Harry Trevalden. So a very impressive cast there, and we've got other exciting casting news this week because Vera Farmiga will star opposite Mark Wahlberg in the Apple Studios produced remake of Weekend Rebels, written and directed by Stephen Chbosky. The original film is a 2023 German sports comedy drama following a father and his autistic son who wants to find a favorite Premier League soccer club and makes his father take him to see every single team so he can decide. The new version will be set in the NBA and counts LeBron James among its producers.
Yep, one we've talked about very early on when it was picked up. Very much looking forward to this. Mark Wahlberg in that kind of role is very, very good. So yeah, looking forward to more from the family planner, Mark Wahlberg. In other news, Palm Royale costume designer Alex Friedberg has teamed up with On 34th to launch a Macy's exclusive clothing line inspired by her work on the series. And Apple TV Plus senior creative executive Chris Parnell has left the company to join Paramount Plus as executive vice president for originals. Parnell served under Matt Chernis for 5 years, developing scripted series including Dark Matter, Neuromancer, The Last Frontier, Bad Monkey, and Pluribus, and he has had a hand also in developing For All Mankind whilst working previously at Sony. He also led development for original immersive content, including the Adventure series and Bono's Stories of Surrender. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see who fills that spot, both from a corporate level, but also from a creative level. There's a lot still to come with his fingerprints all over it. So, looking forward to what's to come, and looking forward to seeing what's to come on Paramount Plus as well.
Yeah, some interesting times over at Skydance and their purchase of Paramount and the team they're putting together. But obviously, we've all gotten to enjoy the work of Chris Parnell on Apple Originals. We wish him the best in his new role. And, who knows? Collaborations happen across companies, so we might see something come out of that eventually again on Apple TV+. We'll just have to wait and see. Meanwhile, a really exciting week for MLB negotiations. Not so much that anything was announced, but lots and lots of reporting and rumors and murmurings about what could be happening. And rumors are increasingly pointing to NBC and Peacock probably picking up Sunday night games over Apple. We heard Apple was vying for those Sunday night games to complement Friday Night Baseball, and it sounded like, at least the way things are going right now, things could change, but it seems like it's not going that direction. There were actually some rumblings earlier in the week that Apple might be pulling out of the Friday Night Baseball deal early, but the latest reports indicate that Friday Night Baseball actually will stay on Apple TV Plus at least through 2028, when all of MLB's rights will be up for grabs. So it's like a soap opera almost segment, with all these companies going back and forth, and the commissioner making hints, but then going dark, and we don't know exactly what's going on there, but all these reports, it's made for some really interesting discussions this week, and hopefully we'll get some official words soon, so we'll know, I want to know the future of Friday Night Baseball, and if Apple's got any other involvement with MLB. And then, of course, we get to do all of this again here in just a few years, because MLB's got all of its rights expiring in 2028, and so who knows what's going to happen then. But if this round of negotiations is any indication, it's going to be another wild ride, but hopefully we'll get some official confirmation soon of what's happening there. But that's all for another day, Sigmund. Right now we need to talk about this week's Apple TV releases. What's coming out this week?
Well, Wednesday sees, of course, new episodes of both Platonic and Acapulco. Friday sees the premiere of K-Popped, a show that I am very, very much enjoying during our preview time with it, but that's as much as we can say due to embargo. And we get the kids and family premiere of Shape Island Season 2, alongside, of course, new episodes of Invasion, Chief of War, and Foundation. What a Friday lineup that is on Apple TV+. And that continues with Friday Night Baseball, Braves versus Phillies at 6:45 p.m. Eastern, followed by Orioles versus Giants at 10:15 p.m. Eastern. Also for sports fans, this week sees the culmination of the MOS Leagues Cup with its final on Sunday on MOS Season Pass on the Apple TV app. And if that wasn't enough, Devon, we of course have, once again, a slew of extras.
So many extras this week, Sigmund. Let's go through them. First up is No Frame Missed. It's an Apple short film portraying how the iPhone empowers users with Parkinson's disease, especially around action mode on the camera. If you haven't seen this film, I was in tears watching it because it really was incredible. I love when Apple highlights accessibility features using real people and how it impacts their lives, and getting to share that. Yeah, it really was touching. Of course, there's a parenting angle segment, which is instant way into my heart. Definitely check out that short film. For Highest to Lowest, we've got A$AP Rocky on playing Young Felon. And then for Shrinking, we've got the cast playing Most Likely To. Several Severance extras this week, including Britt Lauer's casting tape, which has been referenced on the Severance podcast several times, but now it's out for everyone to see. Mark and Helly, A Love Story, and The Tournament of Fripperies, a live podcast recording with the cast and creators of Severance. Apple hasn't been super involved with the Severance podcast, at least on the front that we've seen, so it's cool to see that crossover there and see that posted. You can listen to it on the podcast feed, or you can watch it on YouTube, and it's hilarious either way. Anytime that cast gets together, it's supposedly a game show, but the rules pretty quickly fall apart. And then we've got a bunch of studio rewatches, including How to Transport a Body with Seth Rogen and Bryan Cranston, How to Shoot a Wonder with Seth Rogen and Sarah Polley, How to Give a Presentation with Seth Rogen and Catherine O'Hara, and How to Throw a Burrito with Chase Sweet Wonders and Ike Barinholtz. So a bunch of great ways to revisit the studio. We've talked before about how the studio is one of those shows that we can just put on and play over and over. But if you'd like a little bit of a different angle on it, you can watch the cast, watch the studio, and reflect on it, which is great. Now, each week, Sigmund, you do a great roundup of TV app highlights, films and series that are available across the TV app for people to watch, either streaming or oftentimes purchasing. But before we get into that, we wanted to share with you another way of getting deals on TV shows and films, as well as gadgets and devices and lots of other tech things. That is the Mac Stories Deals account, both on Mastodon and on Blue Sky, where every day we're sharing gear that the team has used and can vouch for that is on discount and you can get a good deal on. So we'll link to both of those in the show notes, whether you're a Mastodon, Blue Sky user, or both. If you're interested in checking out those deals and getting those on your timeline each and every day, we highly recommend you follow that. But for this week's TV app highlight, Sigmund, what do you have for us?
Well, I've got a bunch of films that I've been looking forward to, and one that I've kind of like not been, but I feel like I'm going to hate watch at some point this week. We start with She Rides Shotgun, starring the great Taron Egerton, alongside Anna Sophia Hager. This is directed by Nick Rowland, and is a story that sees an ex-con marked for death by unrelenting enemies who must protect his estranged 11-year-old daughter at all costs. With little resources and no one to trust, they form a bond under fire as they evade a corrupt sheriff and a brutal gang leader who will stop at nothing to protect his criminal interests. A film that I've had marked as must watch for quite a while since I saw the trailer as we were going through our list of upcoming attractions for the rest of the year. Also available now on PVOD, I Know What You Did Last Summer. This is an unneeded reboot of the noughties slasher thriller, but if I'm going to watch the Scream reboot, I'm going to have to watch this as well. It's only fair, but this is very much my kind of hate watch because I've heard bad things, but I'll give anything a go. Also this week, It's Never Over, the Jeff Buckley story, an insight really into the life of the famed musician from the beginning to, unfortunately, the very last few days. Also available now is Thunderbolts, making its premiere on Disney+. And on Thursday, we see The Thursday Murder Club debut on Netflix, which follows 4 retirees who spend their time solving cold case murders for fun until their casual sleuthing takes a thrilling turn when they find themselves with a real whodunit on their hands. And this stars Helen Mirren, Pierce Brosnan and Ben Kingsley, to name a few. So definitely one to add to your watch lists for this week. And on Friday, for those that love documentaries, Vice's Broke makes its premiere on Mubi and I believe in the Apple TV app. This captures the meteoric rise and spectacular fall of Vice Media, a disaster capitalism expose that's embellic of an era from the irresistible insider's point of view of a man on a mission to tell it like it is. I personally used to pick up Vice magazine when it was an independent like skate magazine that you could pick up in store. Really, really interesting. Some really interesting alternate views, and I thought it was really culturally quite significant back in my teenage days. It then morphed into this massive media empire, which I didn't really feel any kind of bond with. Maybe I was getting older and Vice magazine was going after a younger demographic. But the magazine was founded initially by Gavin McInnes, who is now known more as an edgy right-wing commentator than the punk rock skateboard-loving person that he was. So I'm really interested to see where this documentary goes and how far back we go and what it leans into and what it doesn't. But yeah, a final highlight for this week. Lots and lots of films in the watch list this week, so I think we need a little bit of TV because we've got another film to come. What have you got for us as your up next pick this week, Devon?
I've got a bit of TV and a bit of really easy watching, Sigmund. This is not a show that's going to make you think in any way or consider world affairs. It's just pure joy and entertainment and merriment, at least in my household, Sigmund. My current obsession, Bachelor in Paradise, of course, from the Bachelor franchise. This is like an all-stars kind of thing where they bring together people from different seasons, either contestants who were eliminated or even former leads who it didn't work out for. They can come back as well. They all stay at a resort. It's just a bunch of young single people hanging out, seeing if they click and potentially getting together. And then, of course, there's roses and new people come in and people get mad at each other. Anyway, it's a lot of fun. And actually, the series has spawned probably more successful couples over the years than the main Bachelor and Bachelorette series have. There's actually been some couples that I enjoy following for years to come out of the show. But anyway, this year, they've really changed up the format quite a bit. There's a new location. They're filming it, I think, in new ways in response to some of this new wave of dating series, like on HBO Max, Love Island, even like Love is Blind, stuff like that. They're kind of taking a more cinematic approach to what they're doing, and it looks a lot better than it used to. They're having to put in that effort, which is great. They're introducing like challenges and like almost doing a Survivor thing where there's a prize at the end this time around. But my favorite change this year is the addition of the Goldens. So Golden Bachelor and Bachelorette contestants who have just formed this incredible community and fan base with people really just taking the Bachelor world by storm. They become the main characters that people love to see. And so just a whole slew of them show up at the resort, older people hanging out with younger people, giving advice, commenting on the drama, and trying to find love as well. So it's a really interesting mix this year on Bachelor in Paradise, totally different approach, and I'm enjoying it quite a bit.
The Golden Bachelor kind of infiltrated some of my viewing this past week as I watched the finale to season 17 of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, with Frank Reynolds, played by Danny DeVito, becoming the Golden Bachelor. So I'm interested in checking this out. This isn't something that I would necessarily run to, but the more I've heard about the concept and everything else, I think it could be at least a good background watch. But you say cinematic, so, you know.
It looks really good. I'll say the content is pretty much the same in terms of the way the people are acting and yelling and stuff like that. But it does look really nice, and it's a lot of fun. It's a world that my wife got me into. We enjoy it a lot together. And anyway, if you're interested in checking it out, I know, Sigmund, you've been on a bit of like a trashy dating show reality kind of binge here lately. So if you want to check it out, it's on ABC in the US and then on Hulu and Disney Plus for streaming.
Staying on the theme of love and togetherness, my up next pick this week is Together. This is really like my highlight for the week in terms of film. A black comedy that really made waves at Sundance Film Festival earlier this year. And it's a black comedy that's also a supernatural body horror film. It's written and directed by Michael Shanks in his directorial debut, and this story follows a couple years into their relationship, Tim and Millie, played by real-life couple Dave Franco and Alison Brie, as they find themselves at a crossroads as they move to the country, abandoning all that is familiar in their lives except each other, and with tensions already flaring, a nightmarish encounter with a mysterious, unnatural force threatens to corrupt their lives, their love, and their flesh. If you've seen the trailer, you'll see how spooky this is, and like from the body horror point of view, they're becoming one and getting together in a different way. The trailer gave me very much, Cronenbergian vibes, but there's also this 80s B-movie aesthetic that has been missing from film for so long, and the shooting style also had my pupils dilate as I saw the trailer ahead of a recent theatrical screening of Weapons. I'm really excited to watch this later this week, and that is Together, available this week in the TV app on PVOD. And yeah, I hope this is a bit more of a success for me than Eddington from the other week, which honestly was a major disappointment. Didn't give my thoughts on it, but there we go. That's enough.
Is that like a pick retraction segment?
Maybe.
That's all from us this week. Of course, thanks so much to everyone for listening, and we'd love to hear from you. If you have any comments on anything that we've been talking about, if you have reactions to Invasion or thoughts on what's going on with the F1 film release, or any of the news or topics or recommendations that we give. We'd love to hear from you. We've got links to reach out to us on social media or via our contact form in the show notes. Now, we are a part of the Mac Stories family of podcasts, and it's a really exciting season for Mac Stories. Review season is nearly upon us, and with everything happening, it's also a really great time to get involved with Club Mac Stories, which of course has a bunch of perks throughout the year, including weekly newsletters, giveaways, discounts, bonus podcasts, a Discord community, and more. But this time of year is the best time to get into Club Mac Stories because with the reviews coming out, we're going to have club-only ebook versions of Federico's iOS and iPadOS 26 review, as well as all the other reviews coming out, special behind-the-scenes coverage in the weekly newsletter, and more. So if you're interested in checking out Mac Stories, Club Mac Stories, and the coverage that we're going to be having this fall, we'll leave some links to that in the show notes as well.
We'll be back next week with our awe-dropping event predictions and thoughts on Spike Lee's latest joint, Highest to Lowest. So until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade, and have a great week.